Okay, so thank you all for bearing with me and being here today. We're getting close to the end of our Thursday Tidbit series, so we've just got a few more of these left. We will meet for Thursday Tidbits next week on the 19th, and then the week of Thanksgiving break, we won't meet, obviously, and then our last one will be December 3rd, so we just have a few more left. I'm Carly Dethridge. If we haven't met before, welcome. I work in the Office of Health Promotion for the Center for Counseling and Wellbeing. And we also have a student here today if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, yeah, I'm Sydney. This is my first semester as a peer health leader. This is also my second year at UCO, and I'm a chemistry major.
Awesome. And so we're going to be presenting today's topic is Broncho Bystander. And so really what our goal is in sharing this presentation and this information with you, we're just, again, giving you a little tidbit of information. And if you'd like more information, please email me at healthpromotion@uco.edu and we can get you access to the full presentation, but just trying to show you what we tell students and what we train students around consent, being an active bystander, and how you all can play a role as staff and faculty in violence prevention. So let me share my screen with you all. As we are transitioning, has anyone ever attended a Broncho Bystander presentation or seen this presentation before? No? Okay. So all new. Oh, wait, I think we've got a chat. No, not yet. Excellent. Okay. Not really sure why the subtitles are on, but there you go. Subtitles are going. Can everyone see the screen that says Broncho Bystander? Sydney, can you see it? Well, I think Sydney froze. Can someone confirm? Yes, thank you. Okay, so here we go. So Broncho Bystander. Sydney, you want to get us started?
Hi.
There you go, you're unfrozen.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes. Oh yes, if everyone can make sure to mute their microphones.
Well, I love UCO Wi-Fi. Can you hear?
I think she got muted.
Am I all good now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. I am in my dorm room, so I will do what I can with my Wi-Fi. But are we getting started?
Yes.
Okay, great. So if anyone wants to chime in the chat about what you think of a bystander, what comes to mind when you think of the term bystander, like the connotations with it. If someone described you as a bystander, would you be happy with that? Or maybe different situations that a bystander might be involved in. Witness, yeah. That's probably what you're gonna think of mostly, and that's a really good general term. The bystander effect, yes, there we will talk about that. That is definitely a big part of this.
Just to give you all some context, whenever we give this to students, they're normally pretty good about the definition and get quite a few parts of the definition, but a lot of times they also just say someone who stands by. So do you all think of a bystander as positive or negative?
I would agree. That too. Usually I think of negative as if it's someone who didn't do something when they could have. I think that's also what a lot of people think of too.
Yeah, so opportunities where people do intervene, that's positive. When people don't intervene, that's negative. Absolutely. And so our goal in this presentation for you all and for students is just to engage in ways and develop skills and how we can be active bystanders. You're welcome to unmute yourself if you'd like to participate out loud, or you can participate in the chat box. It's totally up to you all. All right, we'll move on to the next slide.
So here's the actual definition of bystander, which most of you understand pretty well. I like to, I'm sure a lot of you remember the show, What Would You Do? I like to think of that show and thinking of a bystander, you know, when they like zoom in on the people who are watching an event happen, about whether are they going to intervene, what are they going to do. So that's what a bystander is someone who witnesses a potentially harmful situation, and they can either positively impact it or do nothing, which might be a negative impact.
Excellent. So somebody has already mentioned the bystander effect. And this tells us that a lot of times people don't intervene, and there are a variety of reasons for that. This was started being studied in about the 1960s. There was a case of a woman named Kitty Genoese who was walking home one night from work, and she was almost to her apartment. And so she's in the midst of some other apartment buildings, and she gets attacked. She starts screaming for help, and her attacker gets scared that somebody's going to come or call the police and ends up running off. Well, after a few minutes pass, the attacker notices that nobody did come to help. And so that person comes back and continues assaulting Kitty and taking her possessions. She ultimately died as a result of this attack. And when the police did arrive, they interviewed about 35 people around who admitted to seeing or hearing what was going on, but none of them did anything. And so social scientists started studying why people don't intervene. And a lot of times, the bigger the group, the less likely it is that people will intervene. And so as a campus community, we want to make sure that we are a community that does intervene when intervention is possible. And a lot of times when we talk about being a bystander, I think we really think of these violent situations, situations involving sexual assault, domestic violence, but there's a lot of opportunities for us to intervene in our daily lives and conversations in class. If somebody is being really disruptive or sharing racist or sexist jokes, those are opportunities for us to intervene. And so there's a few different aspects of that. So there's the diffusion of responsibility, which tells us that the greater number of people present, the less likely they will be to help. And a lot of times people think that somebody else is going to help, right? We think somebody else might be more qualified, somebody else maybe knows the victim or potential victim better, or some other reason, but just assuming that somebody else will intervene. And then there's also conformity. And so we really want to preserve our relationships, and being the person to speak out differently than our group can feel like we'll be outcasts from the group. And so that can keep people from intervening. And then ambiguity. Sometimes situations are unclear, right? Sometimes it's not a for sure, yes, I need to intervene. No, I don't intervene. There's a gray area in all kinds of situations that lend us to thinking, I'm kind of unsure, so maybe I just won't. And then there is obedience to authority. So we've seen and know that a lot of people will put aside their values because a person in a position of authority told them to do the opposite of that. And so when we ask students who are potential positions of authority on campus, whether those are actual or perceived, either way, students are seeing different versions of authority on campus. So if they're a freshman, maybe they feel like a senior is a person of authority. Obviously, campus leadership, staff and faculty. And so we have an opportunity to intervene in certain situations as well. And what we know is that sometimes things happen in the classroom. And thinking about if students are viewing you as the professor in that classroom, as a person of authority, the impact of us not doing anything, or the impact of us intervening and doing something in comparison to the other people in the classroom. Okay, so here are just a little bit of statistics around interpersonal violence and relationship violence here on campus. This is national data, not just for our campus, but we do institute data, a survey every 2 years here on campus to give us more information specifically about what's happening here at UCO. And so this data does show us that students are at a high risk right now for relationship and sexual violence. And we know that this is happening. And we know that when students are experiencing things and when they're not well outside of the classroom, it's difficult for them to be well inside of the classroom. And so we can really take part in violence prevention, no matter what our position is here on campus.
So I hope you all know that there are different types of relationship violence. And I really like this graphic that Carly threw in because it kind of shows different levels of it, that a lot of the times, and a pretty obvious one is going to be physical. And so you can see signs of that with your own eyes. And of course, there's going to be emotional abuse, which can also go into a bit more nuanced, like manipulation. You have gaslighting and threats, coercion, stuff that may not be very visible on the surface. And with a relationship might come with sharing money, and that goes into economic abuse. There's different ways of hurting your partner with sharing income and things that may not be exactly emotional or physical, but can definitely contribute to that. And also with a relationship, if you have children, that becomes a lot more complicated, especially maybe if you're getting a divorce. Children might have to choose sides, or one partner might be, saying things to their children, and you might feel like you're on a different side than your child and your partner. So there is definitely different types of relationship violence that is not just physical and emotional.
And data from UCO in 2019 showed us that 13.8% of students reported that they were in an emotionally abusive, intimate relationship, and 2.3% told us that they were in a physically abusive, intimate relationship. And so this definitely has an impact on how our students come to campus, if they come to campus, right? And how well that they do in their classrooms. And we also know that it's not just as simple as somebody just getting out of that relationship. There's so much more to it. And a lot of times as people are trying to leave a violent relationship, that as they are leaving or after they have left, the violence typically goes up.
So, consent. Consent at UCO, we like to say that it is freely given, and most of the times enthusiastic. That's what I was looking for. That consent is freely given and enthusiastic. Consent can be taken away at any time, at any point. Uh, Consent goes both ways as well. You can both give it, one can take it away, and it should be agreed upon that it is stopped and any sexual action is immediately stopped. And consent can also not be given while under the influence, intoxicated. And also, it helps if consent is verbal. So, silence or not saying no does not directly mean that there is consent there. And the 4Ds, I really like this part of the bystander. The 4Ds can do a lot with just more than consent. As I'm going through these, maybe think of different situations that you could use these in. These are a pretty good, just in general, confrontation tool that you can use. Especially as faculty, you might not find this directly relatable in like a college party situation. You might be at faculty parties. I don't know. Faculty probably throw some cool parties. I'm just kidding. Or maybe you're at a friend's holiday party. Christmas is coming up. Maybe even with family, if there's a commotion or something. So direct one of these, which as you can see, there's 4Ds: direct, delegate, distract, delay. So direct one is directly telling somebody, hey, stop, you shouldn't do that. And direct is also a bit harder to do with people you may not know, which is why there's also other options here. So delegate, which also directly helps with eliminating the bystander effect as well. If there's like an emergency and you're like, hey, somebody call 911, then the bystander effect might come into play, and maybe no one calls 911 because they think someone else is going to do it. So delegate helps you take charge of the situation and make sure something gets done that needs to get done. So also can also alleviate responsibility from yourself if you find someone else to help you. If you see, like, for example, you have a stranger who is trying to coerce someone else that you may not know to go into a different room or something, and they look intoxicated, and this is probably not a good situation. So you don't know them, maybe you shouldn't directly tell them, hey, go somewhere else or something like that, or don't take this person to that room. So you can find another person and maybe they'll have a better idea of what to do. Maybe they know the person, and it helps alleviate just stress off of a very intimidating situation. So, and then from there, maybe you can use the distract, hey, you go talk to that person and I'll take the other person away from them. There's many different ways you can obviously distract a person. One listed is to spill your drink, which is something that you might see in the movies, but really does work. That will definitely distract a person, and maybe your partner that you roped in can get the other person away. And then the final D is delay. So whatever that may mean, if that might go into the distract part of it, where you just like maybe start a conversation or delay until the police arrived. If you did the delegate, hey, you call the police. So again, think of different ways you might be able to apply the 4Ds, whether it's in a consent case or maybe like a medical health related, like I said, with like calling 911 or something like that. So many uses for these, and that's why I kind of like these.
And I think it's also important on the 4Ds that you can use what feels most comfortable to you. If you're not a direct person, but you feel like you could be great at delegating or distracting, that's a really easy and great tool to use. And I think it's also great for you all to know for situations that you might find yourself in, but also for you to talk to your students about potentially. And delay could also be a big part of what we're doing as staff and faculty. So we're not maybe going to be in the situations that students are in. And so we weren't there when something happened, but a student might tell you about a situation that happened to them or to a friend, maybe over the weekend. And it's a good opportunity for you to delay in a supportive way. So then moving on, what can staff and faculty do for violence prevention? So great job, education. You're here today, you're here learning about it. Like I said earlier, we do give these presentations, and this is just a tidbit. And so we have two different options for the Broncho Bystander presentation. So one is a 45-minute presentation that was developed just for the classroom. It's called Defining Consent in Broncho Bystander. You can request that from our office to come to your classroom and present on UCOR. And a lot of this presentation really just goes over, skims the surface about consent and what a bystander means, and then also tells students how they can get the full training. The full training is an hour and a half, and we've been doing most of these virtually throughout the semester, but students do get a certificate and a t-shirt after completion of that training. And that the full training goes more into examples and skill building, giving students tools to be able to really be an active bystander. And then also modeling. So like I talked about earlier, we are considered and maybe viewed on campus by students as people in authority. So how can we make sure that we're intervening where is necessary and appropriate to show students how to do that? Because being an active bystander is challenging. It doesn't always feel comfortable, and it takes practice. And none of us do it perfectly, but it's important that we can show students that we're trying and how they can make attempts as well. And then reporting responsibility. So Title IX came out with a lot of new regulations and changes over the summer. From what I know as of right now, UCO employees are still considered responsible employees. And if you want to look more into that or more into the definition of consent and harassment, you can go to the UCO Title IX website, and they've got a ton of great information and great resources on there as well. But we all have a responsibility to report. So if a student does disclose to us that there has been sexual misconduct, we do need to report to the Title IX office, and their email address is title9 at uco.edu. And so we have a responsibility to report if you're having a conversation with a student and you feel like they are about to potentially tell you about something that you would have to report, you can interrupt them and let them know about your duty to report, and then tell them, hey, if you'd like to proceed with telling me, I just wanted to be transparent with you, this is what I would have to do afterwards. Or if you would like to speak with a confidential resource on campus, you can go to the Center for Counseling and Wellbeing. If students do go to the Center for Counseling and Wellbeing, they don't necessarily have to report. They can help students work through their options for reporting if they want to or not as well. You can also put information in your syllabus about resources that they have available to them, about the trainings. You can also slip these into your D2L shell. I think just knowing resources in general is really great to give out to students, because maybe they won't tell you what's going on, but they'll see it there and they'll know that it's available to them or a friend. The first 90 days of the semester is a really high risk time for sexual assault. And so talking early to your classes about what the resources are available to them in the way of interpersonal violence on campus, and maybe even bringing in a peer health leader to give the defining consent Broncho bystander presentation within that first 90-day window of school starting. And then I talked about as well, we have classroom presentations available and program promotion. So we do all kinds of programs throughout the year around violence prevention, consent, and giving more information and skill building around that as well. And you don't have to do it all. I think that's the beauty of it, is that the Center for Counseling and Wellbeing, if you have something happen in class or with a student and you're not really sure what to do, just give the Center for Counseling and Wellbeing a call. Their number is 974-2215. Yeah, 2215. We know that students come to campus with all kinds of identities and experiences, and we're here to help you to best serve our students. And again, I've got this whole side of things to do, and it can be a lot. And I know we're asking a lot of staff and faculty right now, but just picking one thing that you can do, one way that you can help support your students can go a long way. So this graphic here is our sexual and intimate partner violence resource wheel. And this has a ton of really great information that you can put on your D2L shell. And I can send this to you all after our lunch and learn today. But down at the bottom, you can see there's a lock notated that means confidential. So if students don't know if they want to report yet and they don't want to disclose to you, they can go to one of these confidential resources. And again, on campus, that's the Center for Counseling and Wellbeing. And this has campus and community opportunities for advocacy, reporting, medical, different things. And then as staff and faculty, we have the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program, and Erica Serta is our Title IX coordinator. So if you're needing to report an employee situation, that would go through the Employee Relations Office. We also have bias reporting form as well on the, I think it's on the Office of Diversity and Inclusion site, and there are reporting forms as well. So sharing those with your students can also be useful so they know where to go if they need to report. Okay, well, that is all we have for you all today. Are there any questions? Why do you think the risk of assault is higher at one point? Do you mean why is it higher at the beginning of the school year? Yes. So at the beginning of the school year, there's often a lot of back to school parties. There's a lot of new freshmen coming onto campus, and this is really a lot of students' really first introduction period to college. And so if they have moved out of their home for the first time, if they're drinking for the first time, if they're not aware about the definition of consent, we know that Sexual health education in K through 12 in our state is not so comprehensive in talking about consent. And so it could be students' first time engaging in sexual activity as well. And so that's just kind of all of these things happening at one time. And that really creates for a perfect storm of heightened sexual assault during the first 90 days. Good question. In some places you can see that this is called the red zone. And so if you Google red zone, some Title IX organizations will normally have information around that. You're welcome. Any other questions? Well, I know we're going over time a little bit, so I'm going to let you all go. Thank you so much for being here. And please let us know how we can continue to help you, help your students. We're always here for you. And if you'd like a presentation, again, you can email healthpromotion@uco.edu. Have a great day. Thanks, everyone.